Hello, this is Gene. Today is the 26th of March, which happens to be my birthday. So today I'm 54 years old, which is shocking to even say that number in my face, in my head. It's crazy to believe I've been alive that long. It's been a long time since I talked to you guys. A lot of things have happened the last couple of days, last week. But really, most of it is just whole low hanging fruit. They don't really answer the biggest questions that we have. We still have problems with our demographic replacement going on in the West and the United States. None of that has changed. We are heading that way. And whenever we talk about it, things come up. It'll say that we're paranoid. There were bigots, that we hate the other races, that type of thing. So that's turning on, still churning to our eventual demise. So all the stuff that's happened today with Smollett not going to prison now, apparently, you have I'm not going to say that it was racist or ethnic in any way, but a black prosecutor who happens to know the Obamas said that he's already served basically what he needs to do anyway. If he was going to be convicted with 16 felonies, he would only get community center service anyway, and he doesn't really need to go through that. So regardless of the fact that his attorney already said that the two Nigerians were the ones who attacked him, and you wonder why, who was behind that, was him, that they're not going to do anything about it. Now, maybe the federal government will come in and do something, but it's doubtful. But again, this means absolutely nothing to what the future is going to do. And this is how the media and everything just plays this on ourselves. And we don't really tackle the very important things about immigration in this country and the West. And do we really want to defend the West? Or is it just going to be, in Europe it's going to be Islamic caliphate, and in United States it's just going to be Central Europe and Southern Europe, or Central America and Southern America in the United States. If that's what it's going to be, I just got a weird text there. But anyway, the issue is we need to get past this. We need to not put our head in the sand, not look on MSNBC or Fox News, and just get taken away from this stuff that doesn't mean anything. Smollett doesn't mean anything to me. I knew that it was a hoax from the very beginning. The other issues with Trump and his collusion, I knew that that was all bullshit from the very beginning. It was clearly funded by the DNC, and I'm a Democrat, and it was clearly there. So this didn't shock me at all. It's not shocking how the Democrats are responding to what's going on right now. And but yet again, all these things are just distractions from where we need to be. So we're seeing this kind of this rift between whatever the alt-right is and people like Nick Fuentes, who's a paleo conservative, like Tucker Carlson, or Owen Benjamin, who is a white enthusiast, although he's 24%, I think, Jewish. Not that that means anything, but so I have this conversation with my kid all the time. That things like this happen, and we sit there and we talk about it. But meantime, these people, that the elites are on both sides that hate the elites, are taking away what made the West great. So on the day of my birth, I like to talk about how it was when I was born, what I experienced in my youth, and something I've done the last couple of weeks is that I've been watching a lot of commercials from the 80s, from the 70s, the music, and I've been more and more nostalgic about that, and remembering that a lot of that time I liked until I went to high school. Then things kind of changed, but it was more wholesome back then. Although we had just as much, or maybe even more murders back then, and there were people that were bad and people were doing bad things back then. But we were much more homogenous size of a country. We were about 90% white back then. So me talking about that shouldn't be a cause of concern by anybody that watched this video and says, oh, he's a bigot because he's talking about how it was when he grew up. That is factually based that the country was 90% white during that time. We still had problems. We still had murders. We still had pedophiles. We still had all sorts of things going on. We had racists going that time. All that shit was going on. But when you look back now, and I think we do that as we get older. People who are younger on this don't really have that experience. But as you get older, you always tend to remember the good things that you had in the past. Now, I remember everything, and it wasn't always that great, especially for me. As an introverted type of person in high school, it was difficult for me. So that's just how I was. Now, 99.9% of the people didn't give a shit about how I felt. You know, it wasn't like, because I would think in my mind that they got something against me, and they didn't really care about me, and most people don't give a shit about you overall anyway. You know, this idea that they have, that you're in the middle of their mind all the time is all bullshit. It's just all your paranoia that you have. But as I said, coming up on my 54th birthday, I'm having these thoughts in my mind. I'm thinking about how it was when I was growing up and how I grew up in an area that was multiculturalism. I had a black families that was probably 50-50 where I was. Almost all of them had fathers. We all played in the streets. There was none of this. We didn't call anybody the N-word, or we didn't say anything. No one called me a honky or anything like that. We just played, and at night we'd go back to our family, and that's just how it was. Now, they might have went to a different church than we did. They might have went to mostly a black church, and we went to a white church, I guess. They just hanged out with people that were like them, and we did the same thing. But we would come together in block parties or something like that. And there was never this idea that they were above us or below us, anything like that at all. Those things really started changing late in the 60s and in the 70s. And a lot of it is kind of tied to the movement of second wave feminism. Not just because they wanted to equate with the women's rights and the feminist movement, and they did that pretty well there. And a lot of things had to change, and for the most part, I think most people could understand that. They went crazy in the 90s and everything after that, in the third wave of feminism, where they started talking about different classes of people, or intersectional feminism, and you're talking about everybody's oppressed and where you are on this victim hierarchy. Obviously, if you're me, I'm at the top or at the bottom of that. I'll never be oppressed, regardless of how the laws look at us right now. So when I started all this stuff, and when I started getting out of where I was, and I really wanted to leave where I was, I left and I went to the Air Force because I didn't like where I was. And things changed, the 80s and 90s, and I mean, when I go back now, I think of how we dressed and the styles that we had. It's almost laughable to look back at us right now, but I have to look back with fondness because a lot of things were good there. But during that time, the undercurrent of all that stuff was the changes that we were going through, and the demographic changes that changed in this country. And it's been on steroids the last 10 years. And even under a president that basically got hired because of the immigration reform, it's got even worse. And these are things that just will not change. So when we start talking about Smollett, or we're talking about the collusion thing, it means really nothing, because our president at this point is somebody who actually voted for him, has been bought and played right now. He is, what's the word? I'm not gonna say he's bought, but he's pretty close to that. He is not a Manchurian candidate, but he's been, let's say he's been compromised. The last 2 or 3 weeks, his I don't know what the word is, capitulation to the Jewish state has been very distressing for me. Those who watch this channel knows that I have an issue with the elites in Israel. Not so much that they have every right to make Israel all being about Jewish people, but then they get into my country and they tell me that what I believe is now racist, and we have to bring more and more and more people, because without people like me have a backward thought processes, and we need to be eradicated from history. Some of the biggest celebrities out there believe the same thing. I mean, Oprah said the same thing when old white men basically die off, that America would be a better place. Okay, that's nice. But interestingly, one of the persons I actually follow, and I have a lot of respect for her, but she's a young girl, and she makes some type of statements about boomers all the time. And apparently she went online and started saying things about boomers. So I just basically said this. I said, she said something about that Zoomers are going to have to stand up to all the shit the boomers did. And I'm like it was going to be a fight between guys a little bit older than me fighting people in their 20s because they are what? I don't know. So I basically responded to it. And of course, all these Zoomers had to come back and said that my generation, as I am a Generation X, although I'm really close to Boomer, but based on whatever that is, but I'm an old Generation X, that we have done literally nothing. And I find that I didn't respond to it because it's so inane. Because everything that they're using on social media was created by people from my generation. And whether that's good or bad, we did all this shit. Now, pretty much all the technological advances have been with people from my generation, or boomers. So it's like, really? Now, you can say we didn't go to a war, although I definitely could have been involved in Iraq. I don't understand it. And this continually, especially for people on the alt-right who claim to have some sort of allegiance to the alt-right, this continually division between the generations is not going to help us. We're supposed to be bringing our people together regardless of their age. And of course, I didn't vote in all this stuff in to change the immigration laws. Yes, I voted Democratic for a long time, but my Democrats weren't like this. 10 years ago, they wanted a wall. They wanted immigration to be reformed. They saw change, and it became based on how much power they could have. And they know that if they get those people from Central America and South America, that they'll eventually be citizens and they'll be able to vote. Now, they've gone out off the ledge, saying that basically think that all illegals should be able to vote. And that's when I think that they probably went too far, and that might hurt them in the presidential election. But regardless of all what happened with Trump this week, I don't necessarily think that he's going to win. The demographics are changing. Regardless of how great this would be for conservatives, that there was no collusion, it doesn't stop the change of demographics that white people are not reproducing. Vice had a thing the other day saying that white people should not reproduce. It said it's so stressful to the women that they shouldn't do it. And this media is continually pushed down our throat. And it's not targeted at black people. It's not targeted at Hispanic people. It's targeted at white people. Because for the most part, statistically, we work more, we put more money into taxes. So they're talking about the majority, and the majority in this country still is white people. Now it's changing every day. It's 62 point, and it's going to continually go down a percentage every year to a point that we're not going to be the majority anymore. And you can kill me for saying this, but I think that it's a wrong thing for us to go down. This country should be dominated by white people. We should be the majority here in this country. We settled this country. We conquered this country. It is our birthright, just like the people in Europe is. Now, if we do not have the motivation, and another sect of people comes in and just drives us out of this, that's on us. We clearly have the knowledge, the intellect, the intelligence to stop any of this. And it's very easy how to do it. But these people are only worried about the power right now. They don't give a shit about 20 years from now when they're dead, that their kids have to deal with the aftermath because of their stupid-ass decisions. And that's on both sides. So when people talking about the generations and how we all screwed this up and the masses have screwed it up, and because these people are 18 and they haven't been around to make these decisions, now they can just continually bash people who are boomers or Generation X because we're not as good as the greater generation, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't mean, it's stupid. And I'm going to continually call it out. And I don't give a shit if some 18-year-old wants to sit there and say, oh, this boomer dude, he just can't understand what's going on. It doesn't help the situation. Us, when the alt-right, when we have these little skirmishes like at Cal Berkeley, and we think we won the day, that doesn't mean anything, excuse me. We need our young men and young women to get together and mate, have babies. Fathers need to go to the workplace. Kill me that I'm having stereotypical role models or roles that we're supposed to have. All these kids that are raised they're 18, 19 now. They grew up with this idea that women are at the same level. And they should go to work and work as hard as men, and they should wait before they have kids and have a good time in your 20s. and they think that this is okay, and they lose the collective soul that I talk about in this country all the time. And when I have this conversation with them, sometimes some of the people will hear me, and some of the people will respond in comments, and they'll say, "Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm 20 years old. I can't find my way in the world." And I'll say, "Look, dude, none of that's really your fault, but you're young enough that you can change all that, and you have to understand what you're here for. You're here is to procreate, or be an inventor of something. If you're not going to procreate, but you're going to build something great for the United States or the world, that's great. But people who have IIQs are not reproducing. And in this country, not to the man, but almost all the people who have IIQ happen to be white. I'm talking about en masse. I'm not talking about, obviously, certain people that are a certain sect of the Jewish ethnic grade have a little bit higher IQ than normal white people. But when we compare en masse to Hispanics or blacks, we have the most. And then, of course, Asians have a little bit higher, but again, they're a lot smaller part of the population. So, again, what happened today in the last couple of days that's supposed to be so great for Trump means absolutely nothing to what our future is going to be. So when I talk about this on the day of my birth from 54 years ago, when I didn't have the right to say, "Don't take off my foreskin," and I want to vote, I want to have that right to come back to men. I have to talk about this, and regardless of my age, all I have is the experience that I have. That I walk around the streets in a small town in the South, I guess you would call, even though Florida is not really a southern state in this part of it. Obviously, I don't live in the Panhandle. But you see the listlessness of the young men, and if the men are not ready to lead, I don't give a shit what age they are at some point. But you have to be able to mentor them and try to get them out of that funk, because they're the most important thing. And of course, the women are also very important because they have to have babies. If not, if we're just going to let it go, we're going to wake up 30 years from now, and the people that are online right now saying shit that I'm just an old Generation X person or a boomer, they're going to realize that everybody around them is not the people that want to be there. And you're like, "I was wrong," or I should have stopped. And I guess people who are younger are going to say the same shit to them. But at that point, it's going to be too late. We still have a small opportunity to stop it. We need to get on Trump and say, "Put that fucking wall in," and we have to make it dominant all the time that we talk about. We can't sit there, alt-right channels or people who consider themselves that are white enthusiasts, they can't sit there talking about stupid Jesse Smollett or the thought leaders in the party. They need to talk about the more important things. And whatever. All I have is 29 or 290 people that watch me every now and then. I know that my footprint is not big enough. I'm just hoping that people will understand. One person understands what I'm saying, and he becomes big on YouTube or something, and he helps and wakes up more people. Just being red pill doesn't really mean a whole lot of things. It just basically says you're not on the Democratic plantation. But talked about it for many, many years in this channel, about the top of that rabbit hole. And once you get up there, a lot of people, they don't want to go further down. And when you go further down, you realize where this all comes from. And that's where the anger comes from. You can get very upset up here. You go through that anger part of because you've been in denial all the time that you've basically been programmed for all this time. I mean, for me, it was 40 some years. So you get upset and you're like, "Well, shit." And then you go down that rabbit hole and you go through all this shit. And at the end of it, there are people behind it. And I don't want to bring it down. I don't want to bring it up right now in this country or in this video. You all understand what I'm talking about. And at some point, enough people are going to wake up and there's going to be some sort of violence. I'm not saying it should happen, but it's going to happen. So it doesn't shock me what happened in New Zealand. It doesn't shock me that some people came out and said they understood why he was that way. Devin, what's his last name? Devin Tracy, 18th of Unstoppable, had somebody sent an email to him, and the guy basically was saying he understood why the people was doing it. And then Devin's like, "Well, the Muslims are there, got there legally, and it's not really an invasion." Well, that gets you back to the point to the policy makers, the elite who make these policies that run over the country. And it is an invasion. It may be a legal one, but it clearly is. And their culture is not going to be stopped at the gate when they come in. They bring it in. And I'm not saying that those people deserve to be shot, but the idea you don't think this is going to continually happen, and there's going to be a war. You can believe what you want to believe. If you believe in Armageddon, there's going to be a final a war in that area. It's going to be probably Catholics and probably with Jews against Arabs or some shit. And I don't want that to happen. But it's clearly going to happen. And we're going to have something here similar, some sort of civil war, unless if we can get the black people to be on the side of the white people, to wake them up even more, get them off the Democratic plantation, to really be red-pilled and say we're not going to take money from the government anymore. We're not going to sit there and have white people, white liberals, and some conservatives continually look at us as that we're something below them that can't have their own life, and that we're going to stand up on our own and have our own type of society and do our own thing, and then we can be together and we can stop this immigration, whatever you want to call it, that is taking over this country. It's going to happen. It's just part of facts. I may not be here when it actually happens to fruition, but my kids will be here, and that worries me every day. And that's why I talk, and this is why I'm on this video, or that's why I'm talking about this right now. Again, you guys have a good day. Today was my birthday. I'm going to have a little drink right here to celebrate that. And please let me know in the comments. Like this, share it if you want. And we can have this conversations in the comments. You guys have a good day, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.